Hi, my name is Ellie, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about mindfulness. So first and foremost, let's get one thing straight. I actually can't stand the word mindfulness. I hate it. I don't like the word mindful, and I really don't like the word mindfulness. In some Asian countries, the word that they use actually translates to English as awareness. It's too late to go back now. This country has already claimed awareness to be titled as mindfulness. We've created so much stuff around the simple concept of just purely existing that we're having to come up with a word for it. Stick a label on something that basically means remembering that we are inside of a moment right now. It's all we have. It is literally the only thing that we can be sure of and certain. And I think that itself can be very comforting and helpful to someone like me who struggled a lot with anxiety and thinking about the past, thinking about the future, and in any moment but the one I was in now. And in realizing the power of the present, I am re-evaluating my priorities, reassessing where I know is best to put my full concentration because I know where the most power lies. It's very, very easy for us to be on the lookout for potential danger for the future, or to kick ourselves for things that we may have done in the past, but there's often good reason for those habitual reactions. We were created to look out for danger. It is in our blood and our bones to protect ourselves, to protect our family, to make sure that we don't step into anything that could potentially cause us harm in the future. But when it gets to the point where we are looking out for it before it's coming to us and alerting us is when it becomes a problem. We don't live in the same kind of world that suits the programs that we have within us to protect ourselves. So we are now exposing ourselves to all of the possibilities of danger there are around us at arm's reach because it's here on our phone. All of that stuff that we've already consumed by the middle of the day is the same amount that we're designed to consume in our main part of our lifetime. We might not have a lot of personal experience with disease, life-changing conditions, with accidents, but we almost feel like we do because we see it almost every day on the TV, on the computer, on our phone. So we kind of start feeling personally almost a victim, even if we know someone who knew someone who went through something. There is so much security in what is now, and the beauty of everything I'm experiencing right now is safe, is secure, comfortable, is warm. I'm talking from myself at this point. In this very moment, if I take away what deadlines I've got tomorrow, what I know I need to get done tonight, where I'm at now, it's perfect. It's everything it needs to be. It's never about distracting yourself with joyful things and reminding yourself of your gratitude until all the stress boils away. It's simply just acknowledging that you do feel the things that you're feeling right now because you're human and that's okay. And once you can do that, you begin to familiarize yourself with not buying into those thoughts, because I think it's very easy to snowball into a place where our thoughts then become who we are. You think it's gonna go wrong, you think you're probably gonna fail. Next thing you know, you're telling yourself the meeting is gonna go wrong. You are going to coil up. You aren't good at talks and you never will be. So instead of saying, I'm so crap at presentations, you say, I am having the thought that I am crap at presentations. Adding a bit of space between yourself and a thought. Just because these words are whirling around in your brain, it doesn't need to mean that they are an actual manifestation of anything. They're kind of just going by perhaps old memories that you've had of presentations, or old memories you've had of panic attacks during stressful situations, or even future-based anxieties around what questions might be asked, or like that horrible boss lady will be there and you've never met her before, and what if she asks all these like big crazy questions. I am having the thought scary questions may be asked that I don't know the answers to. I mean, we all know how the world we're in currently does not represent a day-to-day mindful living lifestyle at all. We're now in August and I'm already seeing Christmas decorations be stocked up on the shelves in shops. We are not living in a day-to-day world. We're constantly looking at the next thing, the next moment, the next occasion, the next saving. There's no surprise that everyone's everywhere else but here and now. Though these are just little daily examples of how your mind can shift off into other places, it adds up into weeks, adds up into months, adds up into years. And before you know it, you're living a life that you weren't actually living. And it's funny because everyone's trying to figure out what the meaning of life is, what it means to be living. But actually thinking so deeply about what it means to be alive and what the purpose of everything is goes against the idea of what we're actually here to do, which is to just live in the moment that we're in, because otherwise we're in like next week's life, we're in last year's life. We're anywhere but the life we're actually in. There's actually a book that was written, I wish I could remember the name of it. You know, it's like a bunch of 80-year-olds, I wish I knew this before. The most reoccurring I wish I knew this before was I wish I actually lived my life. I wish I was actually doing what I wanted to do rather than getting caught up in maybe other opinions or the what ifs or the regrets or the anxieties about doing the safe thing because it's better for your future. The more we put a power around the idea of every single day and every single moment, every single second, the bigger changes that happen. Say we hear something, we become alert to it in that rustling bush. Naturally, our mind will go to the negative, will go to the danger. Defensive mechanism will kick in because we think there's something in there about to murder us. Our natural negative bias that we all have in us. It's a form of protection at the end of the day, but who can really blame us, right? Every day there's something awful happening. There always has been, but we have so much easier connect to that now. We turn on TV, there's always something awful going on. On our phones, there's always something that pops up that even if we weren't intentionally on our phones to look at the news, we'll still find out one way or another. That negative bias is what gets in the way from what potentially could be rustling in that bush. A really cute baby squirrel that would have been a sight for sore eyes that day for you in particular. Perhaps that rustling could have been a trigger for your curiosity to take a look closer, and maybe you notice something you wouldn't have noticed before. How beautiful does the landscape look behind that bush now you've actually stopped to look? Curiosity is also a massive part of being mindful. It's not assuming that there's a monster in the bushes, not assuming that you can't do that presentation because you haven't done well in the past. You know, you can't say yes to that incredible invitation that you've been given because it's just not you. It's not who you are. Living intentionally and mindfully is allowing, in a way, the present moment to prove who you are today and in this moment, not the moment that you were back then or the moment that you're telling yourself you're going to be in the future. It's a lot like living like a child would. Children are very mindful. They're very curious. They want to try things. They want to see what happens. They want to know who they are in this moment and what they can do in this moment, not necessarily what they could do yesterday or what they're going to do tomorrow. They're like, what's happening now? I like this. This is fun. Of course I'm going to go. It makes sense to go. Off I go. You know, someone's given me an opportunity that makes so much sense if I was to go. Before any of those What if I look bad? What if people think I look stupid? What if... That's the thing as well with naturally looking confident people. You know, those people who do TED Talks, and those people who just make life look so freaking easy. You know, those people that you see, maybe celebrities that you watch walk on red carpets and you're like, I could never. Says who? Are you on a red carpet now? You're just not made of the same blood that they are. Curiosity and courage is simply the willingness to try. Feel the fact you are nervous, regardless, you try anyway. And that's all confidence is. It's literally the willingness to try, regardless. People who are naturally confident and courageous weren't born like that. It's like a skill, it's like a muscle that you kind of just have to practice. So they have the same feelings and emotions as us. It's just they don't buy into them. They hear them, they acknowledge them, they move forward regardless. And then over time, it does get easier because you're kind of normalizing that thought. You know, a thought of being anxious to someone who gets anxious before presentations all the time anyway isn't going to be a deal breaker as it would be to someone who usually runs and gives up when they become anxious, because it's just anxiety. That happens to me all the time. And when you get a little bit better at sitting in moments that you're in, focusing on the stress levels as you're preparing a big dinner for your family, it's taking a step back and being like, I get to cook for my big family, noticing stuff about the moment that you enjoy and feeling the gratitude in the moment. So this moment is one that I will cherish forever, and I need to feel it while it's still here before it's gone, before my family grow up and before they don't need me to cook them dinners anymore. And mindfulness isn't about having blissful moments and straightforward moments, just kind of seeing them as whatever it is that they are, whatever form that they are simply existing in front of your existence. That's what I always like to say. And that's not even getting started with the heightened senses and joy you get from connecting with your current moment when you are in good places. Having a laugh with your best friend or cuddling your parent. You feel intensely when you actually stop and connect with what's happening, because I think most people are on an autopilot of the next task, the next mission before the current moment is up. And when you get to that point that you were ready to get to before you were there, you're already at the next point. So at what moment are you actually going to be kind of content? It's a bit like when you schedule a dinner with your best friends, and have you ever had it where you all sit there to eat the meal and most people are sat on their phone texting, arranging another event with another friend for another day? I often think to myself, do you do that when you're gonna see them as well? Where do you want to actually be? And I don't want to get on a high horse and say I'm always going to be mindful. And that's another very important thing. When you slip out of mindfulness, that does not mean you are failing. If anything, to be mindful, you have to realize what it means to be mindless. That's a easy way to describe what mindfulness is, because if we look at the opposite, not focusing on what you're doing, not focusing at who's around you and what's around you, when we can rein back in on that thought we're having up there and going, I am away from this present moment, you've already acknowledged that and you've already taken yourself back down into where you're at, and you can realign yourself with what's going on, what's important right now. Oh, I'm aware I'm having the thought of that, but this is what I'm doing right now. I'm spending time with my family. A good kind of metaphor would be that we would turn a television off in another room if no one sat in that room watching it. With a lot of the kind of more spiritual side of stuff that I do in general, I'm always someone who looks at the science-backed stuff, and I do a little bit of proof behind the things that I do. I know that sometimes goes against the faith side of my spiritual practices, but with mindfulness, I wouldn't even know where to start. For me personally, mindfulness has really helped with my anxiety and with depression episodes I've had in the past. But me to the side, mindfulness has provided the same results as medication.
When people train in mindfulness, what we see is the brain patterns changing. One thing that happens, for example, is the insula, which is associated with experiencing your body as it is rather than, as it were, getting into stories about the body, that begins to uncouple with the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. And if these uncouple, what people are able to experience the compassion centers, as it were, without activating the stories, which often turn into overthinking or rumination. For people who are suicidal when they get depressed, they can recover quite well, but then if a small amount of mood catches them unawares, they can't see solutions to their problems. And this happens very rapidly. Then the amygdala, the part of the brain that underlies fight and flight, the evolutionary old part of the brain, that tends to be chronically overactive. And what happens during mindfulness practice is it tends to damp that down. Mindfulness actually reduces the risk of depression by half in people who are the most recurrent depressed, people with 3 or more episodes that many other treatments had failed to treat.
20 minutes of meditation practice can significantly reduce perceived stress, tension, depression. This is the percent change in state anxiety. You could see the change in state anxiety by 22%. So you don't need to be a monk to reap the benefits. And these are the first images of a meditating brain. So brain regions in the front, the prefrontal cortex over here, and the anterior cingulate cortex, they're deactivated because they reflect an inability to govern or control thoughts, worries, anxieties. Another brain region that's highly activated during anxiety and stress is this brain region called the posterior cingulate cortex. And this is a brain region associated with mind wandering. And that anxiety relief was associated with deactivation of this region, the posterior cingulate cortex. Simply self-regulating your feelings by just sitting for a few minutes a day can dramatically improve the way that you feel.
And obviously, medication comes with side effects. So you could even argue that it's better than medication. That itself blows my mind. There's even changes in size in our brain when we work on that mindful living muscle. So many schools are allowing more room in their schedule to bring mindfulness to teaching now. We're teaching kids how to focus instead of telling them to ordering them to focus. Getting kids back into the habit from an early age of understanding their emotions, connecting with them, not smothering them, not, you shouldn't cry, babies cry. Depression is becoming more and more common in kids as early as 13 years old. There's a lot of danger with something like that being introduced to someone so early on in life, because depression has been proven to be easier dealt with if it was to be introduced into our life later on. We kind of become familiar to it so early. We think of it as just part of us, and we're never gonna disconnect to that part of us. And I think when we move into our feelings and our emotions, how do I feel right now? I'm freezing cold. I'm on the way to work. I'm miserable. I'm tired. The more we can think about how that feels on us and see it as just an emotion happening to us, rather than buying into a thought of pissed off and I'm gonna flick this anger at other people who come near me today. Separating ourselves from the potential of buying into that thought, which is going to lead us into an action of being angry and pissed off at other people. There was a moment I had this month. I went through something not nice, and it was really testing on my mindfulness because it was giving me a lot of anxiety, and I was spiraling in what the outcome of this bad news was going to be that I had. I was kind of letting it pile, and I was aware that I was letting it pile. So that in itself doesn't mean I'm failing at being mindful, because it's a really important, to know what happiness is, you've got to know what unhappiness is. So to know that I wasn't being mindful was helpful, because I could then realize mid breakdown in front of my partner when I just started sobbing to him about something completely different. I knew immediately straight away what it was. Younger me probably would have got so carried away in the thing I was getting so pissed off at the time that I would have been completely oblivious to the reason why I'm feeling so much pent-up emotion. And I stopped mid-tracks. I looked at him in the eyes and I was like, I'm just really upset about the month that I've had. And he just opened his arms and I just cried into them. And that is awareness. Though I wasn't being mindful, I was learning so much about mindfulness by not being mindful. But then mindfulness itself helped me get back in tune with what I was actually feeling, and I could take that feeling and instead see it with compassion, look at it with love and give it a hug and say, Jesus Christ, Ellie, you've had a hard month. It's okay. Cry. And I did. I received a phone call from my family member and it was news that it's the worst kind of news you don't want to hear. For someone to say, to cope better in this situation, you just got to feel the experience and you've got to really live in it. And you're just like, can you not? People might think that mindful living is like being so relaxed in a state of zen that you're okay with everything happening around you. Like, no, it's fully immersing yourself into it. And I think that itself helps you become that solid mountain that sits in that landscape in all kinds of weathers, because you've got a stronger sense of yourself and how you can cope no matter what. If we distract ourselves from something that's happening around us, when we reach a storm, when something gets really chaotic, when a lightning bolt hits, we crumble because we're not used to it. We're not used to facing the music. I guess I kind of envision someone walking through a snowstorm. We don't pretend the snow is not there. We don't skip through it or walk as we normally would on a dry road. We kind of slide with the snow, to help us to not slip and fall over. We move with the weather that we've been given. I do tend to worry more than others and escalate, and I used to sit up at night and just have these horrible imaginative scenarios of family members dying. I don't know if it was down to stuff I watched as a kid or what. I don't know where it came from. It was like a separation anxiety sort of thing. What's interesting is now I live so far away from them, so I'm really separated now, and that kind of goes hand in hand with mindful living, because once you're conscious of your core of what the point is and what every day of your life's purpose is all about, once you remember that every day and remind yourself consciously and not go on autopilot and just go to work mindlessly and without thinking what do I want to do, where am I going here, what's my point, you're more in tune with what places you resonate with more, and what the checking in on yourself of am I doing all the things that I want to do today in order to find myself a good future. So there's so many really powerful things that come with conscious thinking. When you receive news about health in your family, it's so difficult for anyone, but for me, I was my whole body went into sweats. I laughed to myself because I could feel the mindfulness that I try and keep tuned into every day drain from my body. And if I had someone saying to me, you've just got to really sink in that experience and let it all in, I would have told them to F off. And that's coming from someone who ultimately does understand the benefits of doing that. But it's really hard when you're in that moment. The kind of long-term reality of it is that you're not going to be that strong mountain I mentioned. You're not adding towards that stable heart and mind that you want to have. I never really knew when these moments were coming to me. I would be in a spiral of overthinking for a whole evening, and I wouldn't even think that it was happening until it was over, if that makes sense. I would get myself in these pits of worry and start imagining crazy things, and just I could feel myself fixating on them, maybe even daydreaming into them. Maybe even my actions were subconsciously happening alongside them. I'd be eating food because I'm anxious and I'm thinking about that thing, or I put on a movie to try and distract myself about that thing. Making stupid decisions with friends, doing things to distract me from my struggles and the things I think about sometimes. And I'm living in the consequences of all my thoughts. Even how I might ask my mum where she's going and how long she's going to be, that's a action, that's a consequential action of those thoughts that I'm mustering up every day. It's only until now, I'm like 27 years old, and I'm able to be like, I'm spiraling into a thought again. They don't exist. I'm not buying into them. Pause and breathe before I subconsciously start like turmoil, chaos in different areas of my life that aren't even related. I could feel myself get intense with my partner, for example, and kick in about something that I saw on Twitter, and it really pissed me off. And it wasn't until I started crying about this stupid Twitter thing until I realised the issue isn't in the Twitter thing. I'm just really anxious and worried about my family. I could have not consciously, mindfully zoned in on that. Who's really in control? Is it the horse or is it the rider? Well, most might say the rider. Some might even say the horse. But actually it's both. Realizing that you've got to be in tune with like the needs of that horse. In the past, my whole life, I've always kind of imagined health scares and stuff in my family. That has kind of like set myself up for experiencing it now and being like, I feel like I've experienced this 1 million freaking times because I had such a vivid imagination as a kid. It's a shitty situation. I'm just moving forward with it and raising kind of the positives. That was something kind of shitty, and that's a very important factor in mindfulness as well. Just like seeing the joy somewhere and even like the humor out of it, I guess. Something I told myself was that there are benefits in health scares bring about appointments and blood tests and scans and checks, which can, if anything, find something before anything worse happened. It's good that there's kind of people running around now checking things out, because had there not been, we don't know, there might be some underlying stuff happening there. Be gentle. Mindfulness is gentleness as well. I always say exist in your feelings and give them like the green light of you can happen, that's fine. You just don't have to control everything that I do and every inch of my day and how my week's going to look. It allows your body to feel accepted for whatever is happening to it. So when you are pissed off, that's okay to feel pissed off because they did something that hurt you. Breathe and continue your second by second actions from the person that you want to be today. You don't have to buy into that frustration and start getting angry at everyone, or you can. It's up to you. As long as you're aware you are having a thought of being pissed off, and that is why you're feeling pissed off, the rest is down to you. The action is down to you about what you want to do with that, whether you want to lean into that or not. You could simply sit by it and watch it and acknowledge it and thank it for letting you understand it, because that's another thing. We can move ourselves away from how we feel and emotions and thoughts and stuff, pretend they're not there, distract us, until they kind of boil and explode and we just go mental like I did the other day. Or we can sometimes, by seeing our thoughts and emotions, learn from them. An example would be jealousy. If you're feeling pangs of jealousy about a friend and you're getting annoyed because they're doing all these wonderful things, you can kind of become bitter subconsciously, not realizing why you are. Or you can look at that jealousy and say, my heart's feeling jealousy because I really want to live a lifestyle that they're living. Like, can you notice how I'm stepping into compassion and love for myself and respect for myself? Because all emotions are trying to do, all our thoughts and our feelings are trying to do, is get our attention, essentially. They're trying to say, hey, there's a part of me that's really triggered by something that's happened here, and there's good reason behind it. You just got to kind of look at it and explore and pick it apart a bit, and therefore understand yourself deeper once you do that. But a lot of the time we're told not to cry, not to express, not to think too much, it's not about not thinking too much of mindfulness, it's just looking into what we're thinking. And the last benefit that I think mindfulness has really had on me, which would be really good for anyone who can relate to this, is my empathy. I had a really hard time bringing my own vibe into a room, bringing my own energy into a room. I soak in other people's emotions very strongly, and I can walk into a room and feel the energy, see the energy, and associate to it and soak it up and start becoming part of the energy, because I would just kind of mirror and reflect other people's, and it was a trait about myself I didn't like. But mindfulness allows you to stop for a minute in a chaotic environment or in a space that you know has a lot of energy that isn't what you want to reflect yourself, and you can stop in your tracks and ask yourself, what is the energy in here? How am I feeling? How am I thinking? What do I want to express? What energy do I want to bring into the room? It's allowing more space between you and your environment so that your environment is happening around you and not to you. I think that's all I have to say on this topic for now, but there will still be stuff we can dig into for sure. So let me know if you want me to do another video on this. Ask me questions in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. I host my own online spiritual social circle. If you're interested in joining, then the link will be down there for that. And our previous month that we've just had, August, was Mindful Month. So join us on there if you want. I'm on social media such as Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I have a tarot reading Facebook page and a tarot reading Instagram if you want to book a tarot reading with me. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. Sending loads of love from my house to yours, and have a lovely rest of your day and week.